This is a rotating hypercube, the tesseract. It's a fourth dimensional shape. Now, a fourth dimension, like, don't ask me exactly what it is. I don't have no idea. A lot of people will say they do, but it seems, yeah, well, um, now I can't explain what it is. I don't really, it's probably, it might be beyond our mental capacity to do this. As we know, we're very three-dimensional beings, but there is a mathematical, like at least in the maths, there is a very powerful four-dimensional key, and I'll explain it here in this video. I'll re-upload, but I've added a lot of stuff into it. It also will connect to, well, 440 and 220, these significant numbers, but it's of a point of interest is the number 369. There is a very famous quote regarding the number 369 by Nikola Tesla. It seems, well, I've got to be honest, there's a little bit of a cult developing around Tesla's technology, and it sort of seems to be ignore his contemporaries and the people who contributed before it. Just, everything is Tesla. Well, that's just not true, and there seems to be almost an angelic view of what Tesla was about. Well, if you actually look into what Tesla was about, he was into weapons of mass destruction as well, and that needs to be balanced against the cult of Tesla. Brilliant guy, absolutely brilliant guy, genius guy. I'm not saying, like, I don't want to diminish him at all, or, tip of a hat to Nikola Tesla. However, as is so often happens, a few little details get grabbed and then extended into infinity, and then there's a tendency to ignore the rest of the stuff. Now, Tesla was into weapons of mass destruction. He was actually working towards that, was seeking funding for that. So that needs to be balanced against the angelic cult of Nikola Tesla. If there was a truly universal language, that would have to be number. Number is within all things, as this quote credited to Pythagoras, so important in geometry and math history as we know it. Also worth noting, again, I've covered it in earlier videos, but Claude Bragdon is very famous, very influential architect. Mathematics is the handwriting on the human consciousness of the very spirit of life itself. This is relevant because you can download the PDF, a primer of higher space. He also wrote the foreword for Uspensky. So again, this not only was a theosophist, but his connection to other very influential esotericians, let's call it. But also this architect Claude Bragdon, well, the tesseract, and we see his drawing of the tesseract or the hypercube, which the fourth dimensional thinking being so important to this greater system, as we shall see. Okay, so now I've posted this video earlier, but now I've added all these little bits and pieces to explain and add to it a little bit more, using a variation of binomial theorem, something which, it's a sort of basic high school level maths. But how this will connect to these very harmonic numbers, these numbers that are so important in ancient traditions, legends, architecture, symbolism, geometry, arithmetic, astronomy, and how these all come together, and to ask the question, is there a fourth dimensional aspect underneath it all? Hello, I'm re-uploading this video. I posted it a couple of days ago, but I made a silly boo-boo in one part and I missed some other features out. But basically, in the video series I've been posting under the name Tidal Harmonics, I've been showing how 108, 144, 153, 288, 432, and 1728 are some of the standard features used in both ancient architecture and modern architecture, very much with occult, esoteric meanings, and usually, so I'll snap up a picture of a Pythagorean chart, but I think there's another way to look at it, and I think this goes a little bit deeper because it goes into the fourth dimension, and that is one of the underlying reasons. In my personal opinion, I think it is the reason for it. So those harmonic number charts is very nice, but I think that there is another way to look at it, and this goes much deeper into it. But first, and also we need to, so this is going to be, it's another way of looking at binomial theorem, which is sort of something you get taught in high school, and we'll go a little bit further and explore the four-dimensional aspects and how they connect up very nicely in some very simple arithmetic. But to begin with, we're going to, so we do 1 to the first dimension, 1 to the, sorry, 1 to the second dimension, 1 to the third, and 1 to the fourth dimension. So 1 squared is 1, 1 to the third is 1, so essentially this is 1, but so if we do 2 to the first, and we'll do 3 to the first, and look at how these interact with one another. So I might as well include, so we'll do 1, 4 to the, okay, so I'll carry this all the way across, but it, first there's a standard sort of very simple pattern. So if we add these three numbers, 1 plus 1 plus 2, we get 4, or 2 to the second, 2 squared. So we would have 4. Now, this would also work, it will work all the way across, but so we add these three, 4 plus 2 plus 3 equals 9, and 9 is 3 squared. So 3 on the second dimension. And this will, if you can spreadsheet it, it'll keep working all the way across. So 9 plus 3 plus 4 equals 16, which is 4 squared. And 16 plus 4 plus 5 equals 25, or 5 squared. Now, if we add 1 to the third plus 1 to the second plus 2 squared, or 4, we get 6. What we need is 2 cubed, which would be 8. However, these will not add up to 8. What we need is 2 to create that sequence, and we can get 2 by 1 times 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. 1 plus 1 plus 4 equals 6, plus 2 equals 8, or 2 cubed. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times, and so 8 plus 4 plus 9 equals 21. And what we are is we're 6 short of 27, or 3 cubed. So 6, we add 6, and we get 27. 3 times 4 is 12. 27 plus 9 is 36. Plus 16 is 52. And we're 12 short of 64, the number needed, and of course that's 12 there. And we have 64. Now this will work all the way across. So using that, just add those 3, 1, 2, 3, we'll get the square. Add those, plus multiply, we get the cube. How do we get the fourth dimension? So 1 plus 8 equals 10, and we're 6 short. Now, to get this, what we need to do is add 1 plus 2, so that's 3. 3, and 2 times 3 is 6. And so therefore 1 plus 8 is 10, plus 6 gives us 16. Or 2 to the fourth power. 2 plus 3 equals 5. So 5. 6 times 5 is 30. And what we need here is 81. But if we add these three, so 16 plus 8 is 24, plus 27 is 51, which is 30 short of 81. So we have that same, this goes all the way across. You can spreadsheet it and it will go all the way through. Now, so go a little bit, so I'm just going to rewrite this needle. So 1 to the second, 1 to the third, 1 to the fourth, 2 to the first, or 4, 8, 16, 3 to the first, or 9, 27, and 81. Now, this is where I made a boo-boo in the previous episode, but now we're going to use the numbers 108 and 432. So to begin with, we have these three. So 1 times 4 times 27 equals 108. That's multiply, multiply. Also notice that that is 108. But if we go across this way and we multiply those, we get 432. Oh, sorry, 216. So 1 times 8 times 27, and we get 216. Now, you could also go that way, but then we're going into the 5th dimension, so I should also add this number in here. So 108 is one of these beautiful numbers, got a lot of beautiful properties connecting also to the golden ratio, a Hashad number, but throughout this presentation, how it's these particular numbers which occur so often and describe so much, especially in regards to astronomy, but will also connect to ancient legends, architecture, this type of thing. It's very helpful to think of them in a multi-dimensional way, and especially in the 4th dimension. I've made other videos focusing on the number 108 and, well, especially in astronomy, how beautiful it is and how many things it connects using multiple sets of ancient, including modern measure, but also how it describes not only the size, but the speed, but also the ratio of distance. Again, just coinky-dinky, as they would say, but 108, it's one of these really, really beautiful numbers, and it's why it's so important across cultures, in descriptions of architecture, legends connected to gods, this type of thing. 108, think of it in multiple dimensions, but also multiple forms, especially weights and measures. Ancient weights and measures especially is, well, one of these very interesting connections between this particular number. And 216, 108 times 2, especially across the 3rd dimension, very, very nice, but also will connect with geometry, astronomy, the 360 degree protractor, let's just call it the compass, and again 216 feet, the walls of New Jerusalem, 108, 432, all these numbers built into this, but more go back further to the Ark of Utnapishtim and this the Sumerian flood story. We have it built into the description of a flood, again, weights and measures, architecture, legends, especially flood stories, all just coming together around this beautiful maths, this beautiful geometry, of a cube, etc., for 2nd dimension and 3rd dimension. 216. Now, you could also go that way, but then we're going into the 5th dimension, so I should also add this number in here. So we got 108, 144, 153, 216, 288, 432, and 1728. So if you did include 1 to the 5th, but this is, we will also get 432 if we head up in that direction. So that would be times is 432. But 108 times 2, 216, 216 times 2, 432, the harmonic series of numbers built around 27. But again, the New Jerusalem, the Ark of Utnapishtim, the Yugas, again this cycle of time which is connected to the flood story in the Hindu tradition, geometry, astronomy, weights and measures, cross time, cross cultures, just all connects again just, and it's built around especially we get taught binomial theorem. I think this 4D matrix, let's call it, which I'm showing here, is possibly another way to consider it. And again, it's very simple arithmetic, but it builds up to so much, and that's why I think this is important. I'm not suggesting that this was the way that it was done back then. However, it works, and so whether it's ancient or modern really isn't important. 432. While we're on 432, I think this is one of the points I want to make in this particular video, why I'm redoing it with these extensions, is 432 versus 440. So 440 is what they call concert pitch now. Previously, around 432 now, there are other people who've covered it, go into detail about this, but you often see the 432 versus 440 thing. Well, we get in this particular format, this four-dimensional format, and looking at these particular numbers in this sort of binomial theorem way, not only do we get 432, but we also get 440, and we get it in a very, very interesting way. Also worth noting is that, for instance, the Great Pyramid is 440 cubits at the base. It's a very important number. 528, once you convert 440 cubits, that converts to 528, what Robin Heath calls the sacred Jewish cubit. So 528, very musical as well, but in the fourth dimensional sense, why is 440 so important? Well, also using this particular method, so well, the fourth and the fifth, but if we what's the best, intradimensional, so what's the differences between the first, second, third and fourth dimension? So what, but on the fourth, or between the third and the fourth, add them up, you get 220. Between the fourth and the fifth, add them up and you get 440. On this, that's the only time where the previous is half of the next one. So that's a nice little thing. But it's also nice to notice that, well, 5 to the fourth power minus 4 to the fourth power is 369. But you're also getting 37 in there and some other, again, these lovely numbers just keep emerging over and over and connecting to this system, for one of the, well, I think that is the term for it. And again, so we've thinking up through the fourth dimension, and well, binomial theorem and this geometry and this metrology and these this mythology, it really does sort of blend in and also have this musical aspect with the 220 and 440 scale versus the 432. Either way, both of them are embedded in this particular fourth dimensional system of thinking.
Here's an interesting, that's a good, interesting point to begin, but let's go, we'll do the first, 3 to the first, and 4 to the first, 1. So that would be 2 squared, 2 cubed, 2 to the fourth, 3 squared, 3 cubed, and 3 to the fourth, 4 squared, 4 cubed, and 4 to the fourth. Now here's where the number 288 really appears, and the beauty of it comes out, and it's a beautiful four-dimensional number. And by that, I mean, if we add these four numbers, 1 plus 4 plus 27 plus 256, we get 288, so plus, plus, plus. And alternatively, if we go across the other diagonal, times, we get 288. Another interesting,
Embedded in ancient architecture, embedded in modern architecture, especially that connected to major public buildings. So for instance, the US Capitol building is 288 feet. Where Canberra, Brasilia, Astana, where the center of power is in these very important geometric cities, so linked to the esoteric, we find that 288 is at the heart of these particular cities, but also ancient architecture as well. But why 288 is a perfect four-dimensional number, and there we see if we go diagonally one way, if we add them up, we get 288. If we multiply them in from the bottom to the top, we get 288. This is, well, I think, and 288 is also very musical as well in Pythagorean tuning as well, just like 432, 288, and 432 on this scale of music. Just as with those previous sets of numbers, whether it's geometry, measurement, sun, and the earth, even the Mayan calendar, D 288 hertz. Also, you can see, so 1 plus 11, 21, 31, 41, 61 plus 71, 288. These very special numbers have these cross time, cross cultures, cross systems of metrology, including its interesting 288 Kelvin average temperature, and each one will connect to the other, and especially through the harmonic scales. But there's another interesting point about that. For instance, the number 153, for instance, 153 fishes in a net. Again, I've done some videos ago, and it's how it's just really built into ancient and modern systems. One of those things hidden in plain sight, as they say. If you think dimensionally, especially the third dimension, 288 across the fourth dimension, but along the third, as in 216, we saw a similar thing happening again. Well, 288 and 153 are married to one another, is a term I'm using, but we'll come to this in a moment, because the importance of this particular number, especially in regards to various religions, old religions, but also in geometry and astronomy, 153.
The thing worth pointing out is that, so we get 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10, 1 plus 4 plus 9 equals 30, 1 cube plus 2 cube plus 3 cube plus 4 cube equals 100, and 1 plus 16 plus 81 plus 256, and flip my head for a moment, so would it be 98 plus 256 would give us 354. That one's very interesting now. It doesn't really connect directly to what I'm saying here, but it does have these same implications. Now, also another sort of cool thing is that if you'll notice that this pattern of the first dimension and the second dimension being squared, so 10 squared is 100, you'll find that this has a very similar way of continuing through. It's very nice and very interesting. Now, go a little bit further into this, and so 1 squared, 1 to the cube, 1 to the fourth, 2, 4, 8, 16, 9, 27, and 81. Now, okay, so we'll go 4, 5, 6, and we'll also include 12, and then we'll also go across to 20. And why these particular numbers? Well, to begin with, so 2 times 3, that was like one of the ways we got the key in the first part. So 1 times 2, but also 2 times 3 equals 6. So we'll mark these out. 2 times 3 equals 6. 3 times 4 equals 12. 4 times 5 equals 20. And at this point we need to include the squares of 4. That's 16. 4 cubed is 64. And 4 to the fourth is 256. But and actually need to include these as well. So 25 is 5 squared, 125, 5 cubed, and 625, 5 to the fourth. Now, why are these, why is 6, 12, and 20 so important? Well, to begin with, so we have to go down to the second dimension, and if you multiply these we get 36, multiply that we get 144, multiply this we get 400. Now each of these numbers are very special, especially in, well, for instance, the number 400, the moon is 400 times smaller than the earth, but the sun is 400 times further away. 144 will come up in like the size of the sun and the earth, sun and the moon in modern scales, but also ancient scales such as Ionic and Doric foot. But what you might notice is that 6 squared is 36, 12 squared is 144, 20 squared is 400. So what we now can do is use those and insert those numbers. So if we multiply 2 times 3 or 4 times 9, we get 36, so we can fill in that square. We go across to 12, that's 12 squared, and that is 20 squared is 400. Now if we go back over here and I'll show you, so 1 plus 1 plus 2 equals 4, or 2 squared. 4 plus 2 plus 3 equals 9, or 3 squared. So you can basically now use that to find out the next one. So we, without any, 12 plus 1 equals 13. Therefore, 144 plus 12 plus 13 equals 169, or 13 squared. Or the same sort of thing. So 21, 400 plus 20 plus 21 is 441, or 20 squared. So now that we have those, we can use the same rule that goes down here. So for instance, to find the gap, to give us 8, we multiply 1 times 2. So 1 plus 4 plus 2 equals 8. So that would apply to the same thing here. So these numbers will build up on themselves, and then again, using that rule, then we can find the 4th dimensional number. So just by following the same pattern here and using these keys, these will then build up. So you can really build up your numbers really quickly. You can work out what squares are working. Now, on a side note, there's a similar sort of things that's going on with squared roots, and so this is, we're talking about squares, cubes, but if we look at cubes, so for instance, the square root of 2 equals the square root of 8 over 2, or the square root of 3 equals the square root of 12 over 2, square root of 4 equals square root of 16 over 2, which you could write as square root of x equals 4x over 2. The number 4 especially connecting to Bode's law, but in this pattern the number 4 is also very curious at basically all these numbers. There's a rule of 4 connecting all of them, but I'm not going to do that at the moment. But so for instance, so I began with 108, 144, 216, 288. Now again, if you were to get like 216 and is 6 cubed, and 1296 would be 6 to the 4. But what I want to show with that is, so like 108 we've shown, 144 being 12 squared, emerging again, so 9 times 16. And I showed how 288 is a cool connector. but what's more to that? So we're going to do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36 in the third dimension, 8, 27, 64, 125, and 216. 1 to the fourth is 16, 81, 256, 625, and 1296. And here 144 is one of the lovely things that comes out now. For instance, if we add these three, 3 plus 16 plus 125, or 3 to the first plus 4 to the second plus 5 to the third equals 144. And if we carry it down one more, so 3 to the first plus 4 to the second plus 5 to the third plus 6 to the fourth equals 1440. So interesting also 3, 4, 5, 6. If you're into your Egyptian royal miles.
Once more, think about these things, not just the first, the second, or the third, but also the fourth dimension. And this is now we see this very special number 144. Geometry, arithmetic, astronomy, connection. Well, could go into music, but just geometry, arithmetic, and astronomy. Here we see 144, 3, 4, 5, almost as in that nice little link to the 3, 4, 5 triangle. But if we add to the sixth to the fourth power, we get 1440. Again, on this scale, this is the one place that it happens, just like 220 and 440 we showed earlier. It just happens to pop up again at these spaces. Very interesting. Again, I've covered it in an earlier video, so without going through every single point, but geometry, well, arithmetic, time, 1440 minutes, which connects to the geometry, but also the metrology of in the ancient scale, the long foot, as it's called, 144 being a descriptor of both the sun and the moon, so we have the earth through time, but also not only ancient weights and measures, but also even screen resolution to this day. Just keeps feeding back on itself.
That's the polar diameter of the earth. So 144, but also, so now the number 153, and we're going to use now the third dimension here, and we're going to separate these out. And so what's sort of cool about that is, so we've got this, so the first three alternates, and so 153 is the smallest narcissistic number. And why is that? Because 1 to the third plus 3 to the third plus 5 to the third equals 153. But we come back to the importance of the number 288. And so also it's a beautiful number across 4 dimensions, but it's also a lovely number. So if we highlight these three, and so we have 288 equals 2 to the third plus 4 to the third plus 6 to the third. And so therefore we can see how 153 and 288 are married to each other in the third dimension. This whole...
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the importance of 288 and how it seems to be married to the number 153. Now, 288 was a very significant number, very, amongst the infinite seed. Every number is special, but some seem to be more special than others. And for instance, the properties of 153 just really single it out, make it very special amongst this infinite sea of numbers. And there you start to get an idea of it. Not the lowest narcissistic number. Well, it's a palindrome, pardon the misspelling there, in binary as well, which is, well, so is 53 and 273 coincidentally. But 153 fishes, and again, it's not just there. You'll see it in the Baha'i faith and others as well. But the square root of 153, which is the best whole number, so 265 over 153 is the best whole number description of a square root of 3, where we get from the vesica. The square root of 153 slightly rounded off, but 12.369, it's 12.3688, I think. But that's how many full moons or synodic months there are per year. 13.369 is how many sidereal months there are per year: sun, earth, moon and star.
Uh, this whole system, like this four-dimensional matrix, let's call it, is, I believe, a superior way to look at the Pythagorean numbers, these harmonic numbers, because in this system, and it requires 1, 2, 3 and 4-dimensional thinking, but it also brings out all these esoteric occult numbers that's used over and over again in modern and ancient architecture, neology, the study of sacred spaces. A couple of books on it, but you won't find this in here. But this is now, for instance, the tesseract, or the 4-dimensional cube, is the standard, which comes up again and again. But the clock and the compass, all, for instance, the 360-degree compass is made of 21,600 minutes, or 1,296,000 seconds. But also, so for instance, we go back to here where I used these numbers to build up how they connect and how they'll actually build up on top of each other. Now 144 is 12 squared, and 1728 is 12 cubed. 1728 being again a number, well, it's to be found in the Yugas, it's to be found in the Epic of Gilgamesh and in the Bible, but also in the basically all the buildings, all the great cathedrals of the world, including modern secular buildings in Washington, Brasilia, Canberra and Astana. And it really, so if we go back to the beginning, it's really just this, 1 plus 2, 2 plus 1, 3 plus 1, and then we can just use these to build up on top of each other, and then these relationships between these numbers will then build this matrix, which will start predicting itself and building up on itself. And the binomial theorem, if you check it out, it's a little bit, I suppose, confusing if you're not sort of heavily into your numbers, but using this method, so not only will you be able to create squares and cubes and stuff, and going really into it before you know it. So for instance, 4 times 5 was 20, 4 squared times 5 squared is 400, is how we got these numbers. So the next one would be 5 times 6 is 30, so we could put it and go out to 30. Then 6 times 7 would be 42. And as this system builds up, you're building up really big numbers, and then you'll be able to use those in a simple system. So you're just adding to get your next, so we add that plus that plus that will give us the next square, and then we can use a similar method to build up cubes, and then to build up to the 4th power. And again, before you know it, you're into your tens of thousands, and then hundreds of thousands, and then into your millions. If you've got even some really basic Excel skills, you can then build up this grid, but also you'll be able to start looking and finding other interesting connections, and there really is quite a lot. And so while I'm mentioning the power of 4 here, now for instance, now it's going to be hard to see, but if you start sort of building your little triads, you'll find that the rate of growth will be at +4, and this +5, but +4 especially will be, so as you build up other triangles and the relationships between first, second, and third dimensions, you'll see that. So the, for instance, there's a gap of 10 between these, and then there's a gap of 14, so, and then there's a gap of 18, and there's a gap of 22, and you'll see it will build up by, each time it will build up by 4, and this plus 4 will actually, like, it goes quite deep now. Anyway, I'll leave that. If you're interested, you can start exploring it and maybe take a screenshot to get an idea of where I'm going, and you'll see that this rule of 4s and this rule of expansion basically holds this whole 4-dimensional matrix together. It's something that can easily be tested and calculated and built upon, but there are a whole other set of very lovely connections, and the number 4 seems to be the one, or not seems to be, actually, you know, it certainly is the is what's keeping this whole system together. Okay, anyway, I'll leave it at that. There's a few, it was a hectic time when I was into this. Now, another point about this, if you want to explore it further, there's actually prime numbers seem to be one of the things that are really holding all of this together, and by that I mean, well, for instance, the difference between, you know, 2 minus 1 is 1. That's like, well, 4 minus 1 is 3. 8 minus 1 is 7. And yeah, anyway, so if you start looking at the gaps that join these numbers, not all the time, not 100%, but more often than not, the gap between any of these numbers will be a prime number, and well, that one wouldn't be, but if you start looking and build up your matrix and say there's actually well, a pattern will begin to emerge regarding prime numbers. That's something that's way beyond my ability, but also the numbers 37 and 37 and 73 are really cool in here, and also it's worth interesting, 33 as well seems to be something that appears very often, and well, these numbers I've discussed in my videos before, and they're also built into these sacred architecture, both ancient and modern. Yeah, anyway, I know it's a little bit hectic, but if you go through the video piece by piece, spreadsheet it, or, you know, build on paper yourself, and then start looking for other connections, and you'll find that there's no shortage of them. There's you know, I did this a few years ago, but it's, you know, it's there to be seen, and it's yeah. So all this sacred architecture, ancient and modern, is whether coincidence or not, it's not the important point, but it definitely connects to this, and therefore it's relevant to it. Anyway, hope you enjoyed, and it wasn't too hectic, and have a good one.
Of all the leading lights, the most famous, the most celebrated hermeticists, those in the esoteric tradition, the architects, you know, they're all bound into math and geometry. This is why I believe it's so important to focus on these points. I would, you know, show me one of them who have a truly lasting effect, and who are these profound thinkers. They're all into their geometry, their math, their astronomy, and their music, and they've left it clearly in their writings, in their illustrations, in the symbols and stories of old, are all bound around number. It's why I think it's so important, and it's why it's so underrated. When you look up something, for instance, Terence McKenna talks about Hermeticism. Where's the geometry? Where's the math? Where's the arithmetic? It seems to be this growing craze that take some drugs, have an hallucination, cheap, easy enlightenment. You know, like it's, you know, it's like so much we want now. I want a dial of pizza. I want it now. I want it now. I want it cheap. I want it easy. there are no shortcuts. And if you get a shortcut, any knowledge you did not earn, you don't deserve, you don't understand. And that's why this is tangible, but it also extends into these other realms. And anyway, with that, hope you enjoyed. Have a good one. Study, study, and the truth shall set you free.